Hello, this is FearDragon coming at you with another StarCraft 2 netcast. Today we have a ZVZ from the EU ZOTAC Cup number 159. This is going to be from the semifinals. If you have not seen the octofinals, I highly recommend you go ahead and check out those games from yesterday, where we actually ended up seeing Navi's Minato, the Zerg player, play against Dignitas's Dream, the Protoss player. And yeah, I won't go ahead and spoil any of those results because we're going to go ahead and jump into this game from the semifinals. So we introduce the players. And we spawn up here in the top right hand corner on top of the red Zerg player. He's going to be representing Team Acer. It is going to be AcerNerchio. AcerNerchio, a Polish Zerg player, very strong, has been playing for years, even since the Brood War days, and has actually been such a strong foreigner that at certain points in time, he was even offered a Coda seed into what is now WCS Korea and previously GSL. And I mean, that just says so much about how strong this player has been in the past. And, you know, he is actually a player that's very outspoken about balance, so oftentimes you'll see him tweeting about his recent games and whatnot. So we'll end up seeing how he does against his opponent. Let's find down here in the bottom left-hand corner as the blue Zerg player, going to be the French Zerg player. His name is SyDe. And he is actually, as far as I know, teamless. He used to be on Team Extensive until, unfortunately, that team did disband in February of 2013. So I'm actually not too sure what his team situation is right now because, you know, not a whole lot is known about this player. He's made a lot of appearances throughout various online European events and online cups, but really hasn't made that big splash that he's probably looking to do. So we'll have to see if he can take out a player like Nerchio that's definitely going to put a really big name on his resume, that he's been able to say, like, you know what, I'm as good as Nerchio in at least ZVZ, and of course, winning an EU ZOTAC Cup going to be a huge win for him. So we'll have to see how he does. Now again, this is the semifinal, so the winner will advance on to the finals. We can already see that this game has picked up quite a bit as now we end up seeing the spawning pools going up. It looks like right now Nerchio going for a slightly earlier spawning pool in comparison to his opponent, who's just now going to have that spawning pool going up. Looks like SyDe really wanted to get up that gas geyser as well as actually that hatchery first. So not going to be causing a huge difference. Generally, you might be thinking, oh, well, if you go for hatchery first, you're going to be in a better economic position. Well, kind of a little bit, but really doesn't make the hugest difference just because you end up having to make those Zergans. You end up having to get that gas geyser and mine from it a little bit earlier as well. So all in all, for the most part, it ends up balancing out. But a Zerg versus Zerg is going to be very interesting, especially on a map like Daybreak, just because ZVZ is finally starting to see that switch away from just pure mutalist style aggression all the time until basically you have this giant mutaball versus this giant mutaball. Not always the most fun thing to watch, but, you know, it has sort of shifted away, and that has a lot to do with the fact that, you know, I believe it was that Spore Crawler buff. Yes, the Spore Crawler buff was the change that kind of made things a little bit more easy to defend for a defensive Zerg player early on. The Mutals take so much damage from those Spore Crawlers. They take 45 damage, I believe. And that kind of makes it a little bit easier to just sit back and actually tech up to things like Hydralisk or Infestors. And we'll end up seeing whether or not these players even decide to go for that, because right now it looks like SyDe going for a fairly early Baneling, or sorry, an Evolution Chamber. And what that is going to be useful for is probably going for that Carapace upgrade over here. Yes, there we end up seeing Carapace upgrade going down. That's going to mean that his Zerglings will be ultra resistant to Banelings. That means that they can actually take 2 shots from those suicidal Banelings rather than just immediately dying in 1 shot. That makes a huge difference in the Baneling versus Zergling micro. You can just out-micro your opponent so much more easily with that. And we can even see Nerchio going for that very typical Baneling nest. And, you know, we'll have to see how well Nerchio can micro. I can tell you one thing, he can micro pretty well for the most part, but it's really going to come down to whether he can out-micro his opponent in the early stages of ZVZ. It doesn't even matter what your layer tech choices are until you can actually safely get to that point. But you know what? AcerNerchio going to be playing a bit defensive as he actually goes up to 4 gas geysers, I believe, right now. Yeah, going to be going straight up to 4 gas geysers. going to be getting up that layer tech over as natural expansion. This is actually going to be very easy to scout out for Sid, and I mean, I'm really curious. Nerchio not even really afraid to actually end up showing this, I assume, considering he is morphing in over the natural expansion. So Sid's going to know what's going on in just a couple seconds. There he ends up seeing the lair is in fact morphing, and he sees the gas gases as well. Zerg's actually getting a pretty good scout off to see exactly what's going on. He's going to know that Nerchio is probably going for a very, very fast Spire tech transition. So I would have to say the most likely and logical choice is going to be go for some crazy aggression very soon. +1 Carapace is going to be finishing up, so that's going to make his aggression much, much more effective against those banelings that Nerchio is going to be depending on for his defense. The Spire actually going down over the natural expansion as well. Nerchio definitely has no fear of actually going and just showing his opponent exactly what's going on. But here's a bit of an interesting decision. Sid not actually going for any kind of very fast Spire or lair tech in response. In fact, he's just going to be going for the eventual lair tech, and he's also going to grab a third base. So, I mean, if he can somehow just either survive Nerchio's very, very fast Mutalisk play, or hold out that we actually have some banelings trying to go in. They managed to detonate on 3 or 4 Zerglings. It's not the best hit, but not a terrible hit. So Sid has to be a little bit careful with these Zerglings, though, because he does not want to lose too many. It's going to shut down a lot of his map control. We end up seeing some of those banelings out for Nerchio now, and they're actually trying to target fire down some of those opponents' Zerglings, but it looks like both of those banelings so close to actually getting some big detonates off on the remaining Zerglings of Sid. Sid's going to have to start pumping some Zerglings. We actually end up seeing 20 Zerglings in production as the remainder of his Zerglings get chased away. Now we do end up seeing Nerchio. He does know about this third expansion, so he's going to go ahead and send his Zerglings over to that third expansion. See how much damage you can do. The remaining Zerglings of Sid try and come in just to try and delay a little bit. He's trying to morph in the banelings, but I'm not sure if they're going to come in time. The hatchery's taking a bunch of damage with him. Some reinforcing Zerglings come out for Sid, and he's going to actually be able to force Nerchio into a bit of a retreat right now. No reinforcing Zerglings coming out for Nerchio because he's just wasting all of that larva, and not even wasting it really. That's a poor choice of words because he's actually going to be utilizing that larva to get out some of those Mutals. Those Mutals are going to be so scary. They're easily going to be able to deal with a ton of these Zerglings out from Sid, but does Sid have too many Zerglings? Is he going to be able to snipe off this third from Nerchio? We're going to have to wait and see, as now we end up seeing the Mutals popping out, and the Zerglings are going to have to retreat a little bit, at least until the reinforcements come in. No, the reinforcements will retreat, and of course, with these Overlords out on the map, it looks like Nerchio will have full vision. Actually, no. Zergling's retreating back, or actually going back over to the third. He has to be very careful because even though he has a +1 Carapace on those Zerglings, he still has to worry about these banelings. These banelings could get off huge detonations and really put Sid into a very awkward predicament. We can actually end up seeing now Sid not really drawing back any of these Overlords. They're all going to be so vulnerable to these Mutalisks. So now we end up seeing Zerglings trying to dart around the map, trying to just delay these Mutals from actually getting over to his bases so they can get a chance to get up some Spore Callers. He does have 1 or 2 Spore Callers in some of these bases, and the second Spore Caller going up over at this third expansion, and you can see how much damage those Spore Callers actually end up doing to those Mutals, and a couple of those banelings getting off some great hits on Nerchio's Zerglings, although you do have to remember that Sid actually ended up losing most of his drones over there at the third, but at the same time, actually, it looks like a Zergling run by over in the main base of Nerchio, so Sid trying to do a little bit of counter-aggression, but only able to get 2 drone kills so far, so not the best response. It looks like he was also able to get that hatchery very, very low on health, and then in the meanwhile, Nerchio actually doing some great damage over to the natural expansion. Zergling on Zergling action also going on, but Sid with those +1/+1 upgrades versus the 0/0 upgrades, I believe, of Nerchio's Zerglings, not really able to do quite enough damage. Yeah, 0/0 from those Zerglings of Nerchio, but again, he has that Mutalisk advantage right now, and we don't actually even see Sid trying to produce Mutalisk. He's basically just saying, as long as I can keep you at home with all of your Mutalisk, you can't really do too much damage. It gives me time to get up additional gas geysers. It gives me time to get up additional drones. We can see 33 drones actually out for Sid, so even though he wants to get up additional drones, he is really, really low on it, but he's going to be able to potentially snipe off this third expansion. Big baneling hits going down, but it's just not quite enough. Sid managed to take out that third expansion from AcerNerchio, and the Mutals count is just not high enough just right now for Nerchio to actually deal with all of those Zerglings. And it looks like finally Nerchio just going to go for the counter aggression once again, finally able to poke back these Zerglings for a little bit, but Sid doing some nice runarounds, doing some really great map positioning on Nerchio's Mutalisk, basically saying, you know what, my Mutalisk or my Zerglings can outmaneuver your Mutalisk, doesn't matter how fast they got in Heart of the Swarm. And now we end up seeing Nerchio just saying, screw it all, I'm going for the base trade situation. Gonna just go ahead and run into the natural expansion. Almost nothing here is going to be able to defend against this onslaught of Zerglings. At the same time, a handful of Zerglings from SyDe also going to be able to do a lot of damage over to the main base of Nerchio. Is going to be able to catch up maybe a little bit economically, but 17 drones to 36 drones, really not looking too good for SyDe in terms of economy. And I mean, eventually Nerchio should theoretically be able to defend, eventually be able to get out enough Zerglings, but I mean, will SyDe actually be able to get out enough static defenses to deal with all these builds? I'm not so sure. Nice transfer is going down on that Spore Crawler. He needs to take that out so they can actually start to harass his drone line, and now he does, as the drones are completely vulnerable. Only a handful actually left over on the map right now, and in the meanwhile, Nerchio has actually managed to clean up all of the Zerglings harassing his natural expansion. Additional Zerglings just being rallied across the map to try and deal with everything, and it looks like it's actually forcing the Mules back once again, as Nerchio really just realizes, hey, you know what? I still have around 35, 34 drones left over, and even though I'm going to have this third expansion sniped once again, as long as I can defend my natural expansion with this lair, with the Spire and everything over there, even those gas guzzlers, I will eventually be able to produce even more Mules. What is my opponent going to be able to do against it? I mean, we can see that SyDe is trying to produce 2 Mules right now, getting out 3. He has the Spire done somewhere. I'm not even too sure where right now, as it looks like, yeah, it is over the natural expansion. But how is he going to be able to catch up with this outstanding Mules count from Nerchio? No upgrades on the Mules right now, but does he even really need it? We can see that he's easily going to be able to come in, might even be able to pick off that Baneling Nest. That's going to make Nerchio's Zerglings even more effective, as, I mean, every single Zergling that gets taken out for SyDe is going to be not completely unaccompanied by any Banelings. So we can even see Nerchio getting some great hits off there with those Banelings that he does have. Even managed to pick off some of those Mules as they start to come out. Going to actually target fire down that Spire, or try to, but he realizes that he needs to try and avoid some of that Spore Crawler damage. Although, honestly, with this kind of flock of Mules, I'm not sure that you even need to worry too much about it. Going to just take out the Gauss, because I feel like Nerchio is in such a fantastic position in this game. He is in such a good position to actually take game number 1. Remember, though, this is a best of 3, so that does mean that Nerchio is going to have to win another game after this, even if he does win this game. So SyDe likely just kind of collecting his thoughts, realizing, you know what, I need to have some time right now before we jump into the next game. Let me just kind of think about what I can do, and now it looks like he has the plan. He's getting ready to jump into the next game. GG gets called, and Nerchio takes game number 1 with some fantastic play. And I mean, I really think it had to come down to the fact that SyDe was not able to do that early damage. And yeah, he tried to take a very fast third, but what response did he really have to those Mules? The Mules just unable to really be shut down. So ultimately, Nerchio able to do a little bit too much damage, able to slowly but surely clean up all the Zergling harassment that SyDe was doing a fantastic job doing. I mean, you saw moves where the Mules are trying to move across the map, trying to do some harassment, but you see the Zerglings coming in, so now you have to follow those Zerglings down. Oh, well, wrong base. Over here, you have to follow those Zerglings and come back over here to defend your third, which you do not want to go down, especially when you're going for Mules. You want to have that gas income. But ultimately, Nerchio just had too good of a defense, and that's what you expect from someone who actually managed to get a GSL Code S invite. So as these Zerglings start to clean up the remainder of these larvae, I'm going to give you guys some time to jump into the next game. Click on the annotation below, and it'll take you to game number 2. Only one thing left to do, guys. Click on that annotation, and I will see you guys in game number 2, where we will find out who will win, AcerNerchio closing out the series 2-0, or SyDe bringing back the series 2-1. See you guys there.